Well, after a weekend of crazy games, our first weather postponement of the season, and in addition, me trying to follow the stats for the first time and getting well and truly found out for doing so, we are back today for match week 17 of the EFL Championship 24-25 season predictions. We're going to preview and predict the score of all 12 matches across Tuesday and Wednesday night, and as always, we'll encourage you to do the same in the comments below. Apologies in advance for the background of the storm you can probably hear smashing the window. But today we are looking ahead to match week 17, which means before we get started, we've got to have a recap of the weekend that's just been. So for me, a pretty average weekend, and for many of you, a great weekend if you are the type that like to predict the Championship's favourite scoreline, because there were 4 in the 11 surviving games, with Blackburn Pompey being postponed due to the weather. I got one perfect score, which was for a Championship's favourite scoreline, Preston North End v Derby, and also 3 correct outcomes, 2 for crazy games, Middlesbrough and Leeds United's away wins, and also for Luton's home win, which we'll get to a bit later on my send-off from Kenilworth Road. Let's have a look at the comment section though, and I'm back with my trusty bit of paper. We start with those level with me on 6 points, a few of you in the end, Teo, Mello, Chris, myself and Gordon, all on 6 points. Gordon would have been ahead if he had have just gone for that Leeds late winner in the end on Sunday. Ahead of us by 1 on 7 were David and Akshay. On 8 points, we've got 4 of you, Dom, Sai, Tim and Etienne, all regular players, with this guy on 9. And into double figures in 3rd place, Leo with 10, first time player, well done to you. Peter in 2nd with 11, a good weekend on your part. But well clear at the top, the Championship's favourite scoreline predictor, and what a weekend for it. 3 perfect scores from them in 4 overall, and 15 points for Ojo, who has had a couple of very good weeks in the last month or so. So a big well done to you, but will we all be tempted by 1-1 again? Let's move on to match week 17 and find out, shall we? We start with the first of 7 games on Tuesday night, and that is Burnley v Coventry City. If we have a look at this one, Burnley come into it off 2 1-0 wins, one due to a late goal, and then last weekend against Bristol City, a first half one in a game where, to be fair, they did create a little bit more. They had a few more chances, but still not looking that free-flowing dominant side that are going to score 3 or 4 a game, as they had at times in their previous Championship campaign. For Coventry, a spirited effort against Sheffield United, albeit it looked pretty poor until the red card. I don't know what Arma Hodzic is doing. We'll get to that later. Albeit the Coventry striker didn't cover himself in glory. But eventually, Coventry did get back into it. They dominated the game to that part. Should have scored before, should have won it. But in the end, it was a free header from a set piece that ended up saving the day for them. So back-to-back 2-2 draws for them. Will we have a Frank Lampard manager special before Tuesday? We'll find out tomorrow, won't we? Makes this one pretty hard to call. Coventry, to be fair, with or without Mark Robins, have been in most games this season. They've all been tight. We mentioned a week before Robins was sacked. They beat Borough 3-0. They came back to beat Luton. They're a good side. They're up against a Burnley team that don't concede many. They've only let in 6 all season. It's 3 clean sheets in a row for them. There's so much of me that wants to go for a 1-0 win, but it's midweek and strange things happen. So I'm going to go bold again this week and start ignoring the form book. Let's go for the Championship's favourite scoreline, 1 apiece at Turf Moor. The second game starts with a team in the relegation zone and a team I watched on Saturday. It is Hull City versus Sheffield Wednesday. Hull will feel a little bit aggrieved to have lost 1-0 at Luton. It was a poor game between 2 sides lacking in confidence. Hull probably had the better chances of the match. Kaminski made a couple of great saves for Luton. We knew they were going to dominate the ball. But I've got to be honest, the difference in that match was that they didn't defend set pieces. There was one dubiously ruled out in the second half, where the ball perhaps just went out of play. They conceded one in the first half, and that was the only thing that stopped them keeping a clean sheet. So a little bit frustrating for Hull that it's the same old mistakes, but we mentioned this when Tim Walter came in. For Sheffield Wednesday, a similarly frustrating day against Cardiff, albeit they bounced back from conceding immediately. They were the better side. They had enough clear-cut chances to win 3 or 4 games. They created some great opportunities. It's just not quite clicking, but they're playing okay. They're creating opportunities, and I think it will come good eventually. It's another tough one to call, but Hull City haven't won in a long time now. Tim Walter, you would argue, is 1 or 2 games from the sack. We mentioned this might happen when Rossini left. I think Sheffield Wednesday might nick it. They've put in a few good midweek performances in recent times. I think I'm going to go for potentially a surprise away win at the MKM. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Sheffield Wednesday. The third game of midweek is, well, on paper, you would have said a home banker a week ago. It is Norwich City versus Plymouth Argyle, two teams that had, respectively, brilliant home records and awful away records until a week ago. Plymouth then went and got a result at Derby. Norwich lost their unbeaten home record of a year. They were then bizarrely involved in a thriller with West Brom at the Hawthorns at the weekend, which I don't think anyone would have seen coming. A 2-2 draw there for them. Not the worst result on paper. They gave up a lot defensively, but again, did look a bit more of a threat on the break. For Plymouth, it was the late show again against Watford and two stunning goals from Andre Gray. The first, we were watching it in a live stream on the FM channel. Just stunning, wasn't it? Shades of Van Persie, but overall, it wasn't a great performance from Plymouth. It must be said. It was two moments of magic that saved what was a game where they were outplayed for the most part. So not great signs for them. And despite Norwich being depleted in attacking areas, I think they will find a way to sneak a win in this one. They're not great at the back. They've conceded 2 or more in each of their last 6 games of Norwich. So I'm going to go for Plymouth to nick one, but Norwich to win this by 2-1 at Carrow Road. The fourth game is on paper a bit of a home banker, as it's Sheffield United versus Oxford United. Oxford's early season competitiveness and form is just starting to dwindle now. It's 4 defeats in the last 5, and while 3 of them against very good opposition, expected to be near the top 6, the manner of the defeat against Middlesbrough was a real concern. I know we conceded 5 there a couple of weeks ago, but at home, and some of the goals and the decision making, the one for the penalty for the equaliser, really rash challenge. And after that, it just sort of fell apart second half. So defensively concerns. On another day, it might have just been 2-1 or 3-2 and it would have looked okay. But going away to Sheffield United is not what you want to follow it. I know they dropped points against Coventry. They'll be really disappointed with Armor Hodzic. Forget what the striker did. The way he reacted was just blind stupid. And then to concede a goal from a free header. Just so frustrating from a corner when they defended doggedly for an hour. It looked like they were going to hold on. To then do that was just really poor. But still the unbeaten run continues. Reaches 5 again now. They've looked so good, Sheffield United, this season. I'm going to bank on them to win and win comfortably. I've gone for 2 big home scorelines, surprisingly, this midweek. I'm going to stick with it. Sheffield United to beat Oxford and keep a clean sheet. I'm going for 3-0 at Bramall Lane. The fifth game is, well, a little bit of a banker on paper for a Championship's favourite scoreline because it is Stoke City versus Preston North End. Both of them drew 1-1 at the weekend. We'll start with Preston, who were at home to Derby. They gave up an early lead, which again will be frustrating for them. Only conceded that 1 shot on target. But again, considering they're playing a Derby side that have been really poor on the road this year, just didn't create a great deal. Had a few chances, but weren't dominating the game. We mentioned it with Preston. They just can't find a way. But they have had a few attacking players out. They are a little shorter than normal. So we have to give them a little bit of leeway. They still picked up a point. They're still sticking just outside that relegation zone. For Stoke City, a 1-1 draw at the bottom side QPR. A game where they probably had the best couple of chances, but were pretty backs to the wall second half. Conceded over 20 shots again. They don't look convincing defensively. And if they'd been against a more ruthless side, QPR famously not this season, then I think they might have been in a little bit of trouble. In midweek, Preston, probably a side that similarly lacked that cutting edge consistently. And defensively, at the moment, they're a bit of a mixed match. You've had 3 of the last 5 Championship games they've conceded 3 in. Then they kept a clean sheet against Sunderland, who have been flying, and drew 1-0 against Derby. So I don't really know what to go for. And as a result, and because I've not got many this midweek, I'm going to sit on the fence with the Championship's favourite scoreline. 1-1 is the score I'm going for. The penultimate game on Tuesday is a side that have been in great home form, but were gutted on Friday night. It is Watford versus Bristol City. Watford done by the Andre Gray specials. I mean, they dominated that game. They should have been out of sight. They were really good going forward. It was a better away performance from them again. And look, how many times are you going to play against a team where a player scores 2 goals of that quality? They were pretty solid from open play. They didn't give up a huge number of chances. But ultimately, they didn't take the chance to go 2, 3, 4 up. And in the end, they were pegged back by a moment of magic. It's one of those things. Overall, though, a really good start for Watford, still in that playoff mix. For Bristol City, 2 defeats at home in a row. This one narrowly to Burnley. Got to be fair and say Burnley were the better team in the game. But Bristol City had one glorious chance. They kept the ball okay. They've been competitive. And defensively, they do look better than previous seasons. So Definitely more positive signs. I've been impressed by Liam Manning this year and their adaptability rather than just being one-dimensional. And that makes this game really hard to call. But Watford have been so good at home. I know Bristol City have won their last 2 away games, but Watford are almost invincible at home. They're so tough to beat. I'm going to go for them to nick this one. I don't think it's going to be pretty. I think Bristol City will sit back a little. I'm going to go for them to nick one though. I'm going to go 1-0. I don't think it'll be a thriller. And the final game, the feature game on Tuesday night on TV, is Sunderland versus West Bromwich Albion. Sunderland frustrated against Millwall, a very late finish, and it was a 1-1 draw thanks to that stoppage time concession of Femi Aziz. A really good goal from Aaron Connolly, and without a number of attacking players, Sunderland still found a way to score. And for the most part, they were robust. They stood up to Millwall well, 10 corners faced, a barrage of set pieces and crosses. But they did really well in those aerial duels for the most part. Unfortunately, though, just caught out in the end. So a 1-1 draw keeps them up in the mix, but it is becoming a draws galore story for Sunderland. 4 in a row for them. 5 of the last 6 for West Brom have been draws, including a surprise thriller against Norwich City at home. Josh Maja finally getting a home goal. And to be fair, it was pretty poor defensively from both sides at times. West Brom, of course, producing a great finish for the second goal for Norwich. Egan poking it into the corner. I don't think we're going to see too many games like that from a Carlos Corberán team, albeit created bundled of chances, which they don't always do. I've mentioned it. Between each of their last 6 games, out of the 12 matches, 9 of them have been draws. I have to stick with a form book here. I can't separate them. So for the second and final time this midweek, I'm going for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1 apiece. Let's move on to Wednesday, where we have 5 crucial games, starting with a big one at the bottom. It is Cardiff City versus QPR, 21st v 24th. Both sides involved in Championship's favourite scorelines this weekend. Cardiff went ahead at Sheffield Wednesday, gave it up almost immediately, and they were very fortunate. They started well under the interim, but it's been a few poor performances in a row now. And that one, to be fair, it could have been 3 or 4-1 on another day. It was a really poor display defensively. Sheffield Wednesday just missed great chances. For QPR, a better performance against Stoke, but not the best side Stoke City. They managed to get chances on goal, but again, they just don't look like scoring. There's no other way of summing them up. And I sound like a broken record, but they're just so poor in front of goal. They are, I think, now the lowest scorers in the league officially, because Swansea got 3 on Sunday. Just 13 goals from their 16 matches. It's going to be hard to stay up doing that. So for this game, I think we're going to have to go low scoring. And I have to go for Cardiff to nick the win, just because I don't think QPR will take chances. I'm going 1-0 for Cardiff City. Next is a game I'm very fearful of, as the league leaders host my team Luton Town. It is Leeds United, of course, at Ellen Road. That bonkers 4-3 game I've just watched against Swansea. I'm recording straight after it. My God, it looked like they'd thrown it away. They somehow then scored basically from the kickoff again. It was a crazy game of football. Defensively, Leeds United gave up a few silly chances. Going forward, they looked brilliant, but Swansea's high line made them look better than they were. They've been really good at home and they'd been struggling to get those away results. But 2 of the best defences in the league producing a 4-3 just sums up the Championship. Leeds at home, though, have been formidable. They very rarely concede. And while Luton beat Hull 1-0 at the weekend, again, just sort of calmed the pressure, pushed them up the division a bit. It wasn't a good display, I've got to be honest. Thomas Kaminski made 2 brilliant saves. Hull will be gutted they lost it. I mentioned earlier set pieces were the difference. If I'm being honest with you, it looked like a game between 2 very poor sides. The first half was awful. And the second half, Hull created a couple of chances despite Luton having a bit more of the game then. It makes this one tough to call. I think if Luton play as they did defensively against Hull and against Borough, Leeds United could have a field day. I hate to do this against my own side because I really don't want it to be the case, but I'm fearful of this one. I'm going to go for Leeds United to win. And based on what they offer on the counter-attack, we're going to set up with a similarly high line to Swansea. I think Leeds take advantage. I'm going to go for 4-0. I hate to say it, but I'm going to. 4-0 to Leeds United. Well, you can't accuse me of not being fair here. Certainly not biased, am I? Next up is Middlesbrough versus Blackburn Rovers. I know a couple of you have had a jibe at me about Borough in the comments, but come on, who saw this coming? Couldn't hit a barn door for most of the season, dominating every game without winning them. And now the goals won't stop. 4 against QPR, 5 against Luton, 6 against Oxford. Is it going to be 7 this midweek? That might be pushing it, especially as Blackburn had time off. They didn't play at the weekend due to the weather. But for Middlesbrough, Lati laughing form, Zaz looking good. Conway got one as well. All those attacking players are starting to come good. Borough were ruthless. They took their chances. Defensively, they'll probably be a little upset. If you look at their last 5 games, they've conceded 10. That's a side they've got to work on. But they've now suddenly shot up to become the top scorers in the Championship, which even 3 or 4 weeks ago you would have said was a hilarious prospect. Middlesbrough, though, starting to get the scorelines that their dominance deserves. And we mentioned it before, didn't we? If they can find someone who can score the goals that an Akpom and an Archer were 2 years ago, the top 6 is basically a shoo-in, because the rest of it is a well-oiled machine playing well. Maybe bar the goalkeeper, I think it's a slight liability. We can't judge Blackburn, of course, but away from home, I know they won that Cardiff game, but again, it wasn't a dominant performance. On another day, Cardiff could have scored a couple more there. So I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to nick it based on form. Blackburn haven't been in great form themselves, and away from home, they've generally struggled this year. So I'll go for Borough fairly narrowly. I'm going to go for 2-1. The penultimate game on Wednesday night features the other side who didn't play last weekend at home to Millwall. Portsmouth are the side at Fratton Park who, after a 3-1 win against Preston, had an extra weekend off. Probably helps them with a couple of their injuries returning and building up fitness for some. But for Millwall, what a bit of momentum that is. A 1-1 draw against Sunderland, a stoppage time equaliser, a game weirdly where they dominated the ball, had loads of set pieces and crosses into the box, but just couldn't break the door down until those very last seconds. But getting a result against Sunderland will be a real positive. I know Neil Harris has taken some criticism for his style of play, but you can't argue with the results. Millwall in 8th place, back battling where they were under Gary Rowett a couple of years ago. He really is maximising what he's got with that squad, and you've got to be fair to him. They're picking up big results. Unbeaten in the last 6, lots of wins in there as well, and very few goals conceded. A couple of 1-1 draws following on from 4 1-0 victories. For Pompey, we can't judge it too easily, but they've really struggled for goals at home prior to that Preston game. Bishop, you would imagine, is going to have to be a substitute again. It's going to be a few weeks before we see the best of him in a Pompey shirt. So as a result, and due to the style Millwall play, I'd fancy them to hold on to a lead here. I'm going to go for Millwall to nick it by 1-0 at Fratton Park. And the final game on Wednesday night, the feature match, involves the side who were in that bonkers game on Sunday. It is Derby County versus Swansea City. Swansea somehow lost 4-3 against Leeds. Defensively, they were awful. The defensive line was a mess. They were caught on the counter so much, which is what worries me for Luton in midweek. On a side note, that is. But for Swansea going forward, looks good, created some great chances. Thought they'd got the equaliser in the 90th minute to get something out of the game. To then give it away from the kickoff is virtually unforgivable. A bit too carried away. And the fact there was so much space and they were so open with an incredibly wonky offside line a minute after equalising. It's just really poor. They got a little bit carried away there. For Derby, the points keep ticking over. 20 points, 20 goals scored, 20 goals against. They are just a middling Championship side, which at the start of the season, I think manager, players, owners, fans would have been absolutely thrilled with. If Derby can have a season where they just sit around mid-table, it's an incredibly good return to the Championship as they look to build back up. A 1-1 draw away at Preston was, well, it was the game of football we predicted. It wasn't a great one. There weren't many chances. One shot on target for Derby. Preston had the better of the game, but again didn't create bundles of great opportunities. There was only a couple of saves in the end forced by the Derby keeper. For Derby now, I know it's a lot of 1-1 draws in there, but they've only lost one of their last 6 narrowly at Stoke. They've picked up lots of points, and they just keep ticking along, which is great to see. So I think at home, given their record being so good and defensively being solid against a Swansea side that prior to that Leeds game were the poorest in the Championship going forward, I don't think Swansea are going to get that space in behind. So I have to go for Derby to nick it. I'm not going to go for a thriller to finish. I'm not sure why it's the feature game, but I'm going to go for Derby County to win by 1-0 on Wednesday night. Let's have a quick recap then of my predictions for match week 17, and it is 2 big wins, 1 on each evening. Sheffield United 3-0 at home to Oxford, and Leeds United 4-0 at home to my club Luton Town. 2 Championship's favourite scorelines on Tuesday night, wish I'd gone for a few more at the weekend, and 3 big 1-0 home wins for Watford, Cardiff and Derby. Those are just my predictions for match week 17. Though, do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments section and give me your score predictions for the midweek action. If you beat or match my overall score across the 12 games, you will get a shout out in the next recap when we look ahead to match week 18 on Thursday evening. For now though, a massive thank you for watching and getting involved as always. If you enjoyed it, please do chuck a thumbs up on the video. Make sure you subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with everything. We are moving house in the next couple of weeks, so you may see the background change and whatever over the next few episodes. But hopefully the show will still go on and we'll be able to join you for predictions. Thank you for watching and getting involved. I hope you do well this midweek. And fingers crossed I do a bit better too. And Luton aren't as bad as I predicted.